Yo, 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 my AP Gov squad. It's Mr. H back at it here with another episode of Locked On AP Gov and the Locked On Network. And this week, after our long 2-week intercession, is the machine, the bureaucracy. Remember, law, sign, do. The machine. The machine is what makes things go, makes the system run. And we're going to, this week, get into 2.12 through 2.15 and finish up Unit 2, specifically dealing with the departments, agencies, that and the civil servants that make our democracy go. All right, so let's get into it without further ado, guys. 15 minutes. Let's get our two learning objectives. I've combined 2.12 and 2.13 into one. This episode is the Inside the Machine, how the bureaucracy really runs America. And the objectives: explain how bureaucracy carries out the responsibilities of the federal government, and explain how the federal bureaucracy uses discretionary authority for rulemaking. All right, so let's get it. Let's go. It hums in the dark, unseen but everywhere. A machine built by Congress, signed by the president, fueled by laws, driven by people you will never meet. Flip the light switch, file your taxes, get a student loan. That is the machine. Thousands of gears turning at once, keeping America alive. But every machine breaks. And when it does, we don't blame the gear, we blame the ghost in the system. Today we crawl inside the gears to see what they really do and why they matter and how one tiny screw can crash a plane or save a life. Welcome to Locked On AP Gov, guys. This episode, Inside the Machine. Lock in, let's go. Segment 1, the blueprint. Who built this thing? So picture this. Congress is the group project leader who loves PowerPoints but never finishes the slides. They write big picture laws like clean the air, clean our food, keep planes safe, and then hands off the details to someone else. That's AKA the federal bureaucracy. The bureaucracy is the network of departments, agencies, commissions, and government corporations that carry out policy. They are the hands and feet of the executive branch. They are the legs of law that make it go. It is the scaffolding under the marble dome. For example, some examples here: Department of Transportation handles highways and air travel. The EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, handles emission standards and pollution rules. The FCC handles radio and social media content and television broadcasting. And even Amtrak, the government's almost on-time train, is part of the machine. And yes, Biloxi has an Amtrak now. It just opened up in Biloxi, not too far from the Beau Rivage, and I believe it's called the Mardi Gras track. So how about that? So let's break it down. You have departments, 15 departments. Initially, only 3: Department of War, Department of State, and Department of Treasury. We now have 15. The newest one, not including DOGE with Elon Musk this year, but the newest one is Department of Homeland Security after 9/11. But departments, they have broad missions, and they're led by cabinet secretaries. Today, we talked about the Department of HHS with Secretary RFK Jr. in charge, appointed by Trump, approved by the Senate. You have independent agencies such as NASA and the CIA. We need them separate or outside of political pressure or partisan pressure. They do very specific jobs. We have commissions, bipartisan watchdogs such as the FEC and the SEC. SEC is the Securities and Exchange Commission, checking the stock market to make sure corruption and insider trading is not taking place. And then government corporations, they are very much like businesses. They sell services such as the post office, the FDIC, which is dealing with bonds, and of course Amtrak, selling train travel. Think of it like a Netflix studio. Congress writes vague synopses. Make a superhero movie about justice. The bureaucracy, the directors, the editors, the effects team actually make the movie happen. Without them, the credits roll on chaos. Segment 2, guys. The crash that changed everything. 2009, Buffalo, New York, a regional jet climbs into a snowstorm. Ice builds. The pilots overcorrect. 50 people die. The FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, It's an executive administration. Investigates and writes new rules, pilot rest hours, de-icing standards, and training protocols will now be enacted, right? Turning a vague law such as air travel, make it safe, into hundreds of specifics is rulemaking. That is discretionary authority. So the FAA has broad sweeping power to make certain rules to make this air travel safer. Congress delegates powers to experts. Bureaucrats, not senators, keep planes in the sky. But delegation cuts both ways. When agencies write rules, the rulemaking process, right, they also make policy. And here's where the danger is, right? We want elected representatives to make policy, to have the ability to write laws. And then we have bureaucracy, bureaucrats implement it, right? The risk here is having unelected bureaucrats making policy. We need them implementing it, but do we really need them creating policy, or do we want our elected representatives doing that? So power shifts quietly from the marble floors of Congress, from our elected representatives, to the cubicles of the bureaucracy. And that's the danger there, and that's what people call the deep state. So if you hear deep state, it's not some mythical unicorn creature, right? The deep state would be our 2.1 to 2.9 million bureaucrats, civil servants. All right, segment 3. When the CDC sneezes, America catches a cold. So 2020 Earth, the Milky Way galaxy, a virus shuts down the whole world. Congress writes relief bills, stimulus bills. The president holds briefings. But real decisions happen inside the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And here's a quick narrative or story, guys. And now it's not factual. It is based, however, off of real people. In one Atlanta lab in Georgia, a scientist named Maria Alvarez stares at a coffee-stained spreadsheet. She has not seen her kids in a week. Her task, turn the Public Health Service Act into a vaccination schedule for 330 million people. Every formula she changes reshapes someone's chance at a shot. Maria is a composite character, guys, representing thousands of CDC scientists who turn congressional policy into public health practice during the pandemic, during Project Warp Speed that Trump passed through or ordered. This is bureaucratic power at its rawest. Delegated authority in motion. Delegated authority in motion. When the nation asked who gave them the right, the answer was simple. Congress did. We elect lawmakers to draft the blueprint. Then engineers in agencies write the code that runs the nation. All right, segment 4, the EPA and the smell of power. In 2015, the Environmental Protection Agency unveils carbon emission limits to try and combat global warming and greenhouse gases. Energy companies sue. Litigation. Congress sieves the EPA, cites Clean Air Act. Opponents cry overreach. 7 years later, the fight lands in Supreme Court in West Virginia versus the EPA. And that was 2022. The justices of the Supreme Court ruled that the agency cannot make sweeping energy sector changes without explicit direction from Congress. The ruling cements the major questions doctrine. The idea that when issues are huge and costly, when it is a major issue and it costs a bunch, agencies need clear legislative permission before acting. It is a constitutional speed bump for bureaucratic ambition. EPA scientists test air, issue fines to companies who are breaking the law, and set pollution limits that decide whether your sister wheezes next summer, right? So these are big deals. The EPA does a powerful, important job for us. They are not elected, yet their decisions shape how we breathe, our breath, your breath, everyone. Remember, power doesn't just live in agencies. It lives in the people who run them. So who are they? Let's find out. Segment 5, humans inside the machine. More than 2 million civil servants keep the lights on. engineers at NASA, inspectors at the USDA, it's the Food and Drug Administration, right? Analysis at the Fed. They are hired under the merit-based system, not the my uncle knows the president plan anymore, right? Not this I know the person in charge, so I got the job. It has to be based off merit. So before the Pendleton Act in 1883, though, the government ran on favors. Pendleton changed that. Jobs were based on exams and competence, not campaign loyalty. That's big. So now civil servants should be based off merit, not off loyalty. And half a century later, Congress tightened the bolts again with the Hatch Act of 1939. It said federal employees could vote in elections and hold opinions on elections, but they could not campaign on the clock or turn their office into a political weapon. In other words, the machine had to stay neutral outside of politics, even when the country did not. So and do they really do that? Well, that's up for debate. So when people shout deep state, they're usually describing career politicians, now career professionals, not politicians, who keep food safe, planes flying, while Congress argues on Twitter, X, still not working. They are the heart inside the machine, not the villains, not the heroes, just humans holding democracy together with spreadsheets and caffeine. All right, segment 6, the machine in motion. Each day, the cycle turns. Congress writes laws, vague laws. Remember, rights, laws. Agencies interpret and enforce them. They do. Agencies issue fines for those who have broken the rules. They testify before Congress in oversight hearings or in committee as experts. They form iron triangles in issue networks to keep policy moving. And here, quick definition of it. Iron triangles, agency, an executive agency, plus a congressional committee, plus an interest group. That's a closed circuit of influence, guys, that makes policy in our nation. And issue networks are all that, right? That circuit, that closed circuit, plus the media, plus journalists, plus think tanks, and plus the lobbyists that are hired to put pressure. That's all an issue network would be, is those addition of the media and lobbyists. So Congress says drive safely. The bureaucracy decides what that means. Speed limits, seat belts, airbags, crash tests. They turn vague dreams into daily rules and regulations. Some would say red tape in certain situations. It's a little like Marvel's S.H.I.E.L.D., the team quietly working behind every flashy superhero. All right, mini interlude here, guys, real quick. The hamburger bureaucracy. Let's connect it all in a hamburger, because I love hamburgers. All right, ever wonder how complicated it gets? A single hamburger touches 19 federal agencies. 19 federal agencies. The USDA checks the beef to see that it's up to standard. The FDA tests the bun. The FTC policies polices the ad. The OSHA inspects the kitchen, the workplace condition. The IRS taxes the guy flipping it and running the restaurant. And the machine doesn't just hum, guys. It multitasks on paperwork and caffeine. All right, segment 7, when the gears grind. When the machine stalls and government shutdowns hit, which is happening currently right now in October, guys, no new rules, no paychecks, air traffic controllers unpaid. That's what failure looks like. Not explosions, but silence. Paper stacks like snow. Veterans waiting months for benefits because the VA, the Veteran Affairs code, still runs on floppy disks. The IRS still uses 1960s software, right? And now the October 2025 shutdowns brings this fragility into focus. Federal funding lapsed October 1st this year. and hundreds of thousands of civilian employees have been furloughed. That means they are not going to work, not getting paid, while many others are working without immediate pay. The Smithsonian museums and several national parks have closed. Passport and loan applications are piling up in digital limbo. Even TSA, Transportation Administration, Security Administration, and FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration workers, those same gears that keep us moving, are feeling the strain. It is not abstract politics, guys. It's proof that when the machine loses power, so does the country. Powerful yet fragile, it does not break loudly, it breaks quietly. All right, segment 8, closing it up here, guys. Here is what we forget. This humming, grinding system was built to make democracy work. We cannot vote on every day or every safety standard or drug label. So we built a system of experts to do it for us. But power and trust are the same coin. When trust cracks, every role feels like control. Every agency feels like a puppet master. Every bureaucrat becomes a scapegoat for work we do not see in the dark. The truth, the machine is not a monster. It is a mirror. It reflects what we value and how much we still trust one another. Somewhere in Atlanta, Maria leans over another spreadsheet. Coffee cold, eyes tired, turning Congress's words into policy that touches lives. She does not get a spotlight. The hum is enough. So next time a plane lands safely, a river runs clean, and a disaster aid shows up in time, remember, some gear you will never meet until just right. Turn just right. And somewhere in the humming, unseen room, democracy still breathes. The lights are still on because the machine still works. And that means democracy still does too. But every machine has mechanics, the people who check its bolts and question its power. That's coming up next episode, guys. So stay bold, stay curious, stay locked on AP Gov. Mr. H out. Peace.